All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is, what is today? Wednesday, November 20th. This is a meeting of the City of Topeka City Council's Public Health and Safety Committee. If we can have the committee members introduce themselves, and we'll call to order.
David Banks, councilperson for District 4.
Christina Valdivia Alcala, Councilwoman, District 2.
Spencer Duncan, District 8.
And Karen Hiller, District 1, Chair. Thank you all for being here. We'll call this meeting to order. The first order of business is for the committee to approve the October 23rd committee meeting minutes and the record of the special meeting on November 7th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any conversation, corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Moving right into the public health and safety business agenda. We've got some updates and some discussion and feedback issues. On the updates, the first one is pest elimination. The quick version of that is thank you, everyone. Our item did go to council last week. We had sent it out in advance for questions and comment, did not have any. There was no discussion, and it was passed unanimously. So for the record, got that done. And John, if you would pipe in here, John Chardine from staff, and let us know when that implementation takes place.
Right now, I believe legal has it, and was it published already?
I do not know that for sure.
Okay. So we're just confirming when the published date will happen, and as soon as it happens, and I'll implement it into policy, and we'll start practicing it.
Chair.
Yes.
I would request that the full committee, along with the governing body, receive that notification of when it goes into effect. Because right when it goes into effect, some of the challenges that we've been having, Director Chardine, with one of the buildings in my district, multifamily dwellings, I want to make sure that we get on that as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. One more thing down. Website and handouts. Nicole Stovall, who's staffing this initiative, you want to just give us a quick update on where we are?
Our handouts, we are converting all of those into Spanish versions. And I think Eduardo is just completing all of the final touches for those. And then we should be implementing all of those into the website here. I would imagine within the next couple of weeks, then, if we could get everything updated.
Okay. Once again, we know that some of those are specifically related to certain pieces of the code or certain education and action initiatives, so we can focus on them when they come up, particularly since it's a work in progress. Because it was important, I wanted to make sure you gave us a report. Perhaps when those print copies and the web posts and the translations are finished, hopefully that'll all happen about the same time. If you could, again, following Deputy Mayor's suggestion, let us all know, including the council. That will be a great heads up to the council to just have a peek. As we all know, we haven't had that many meetings, and when something like that happens, we don't really need to have a even time on the council agenda necessarily. Just let everybody know. Thank you so much. Retaliation Assistance. We ran into just some procedural challenges when we realized that as hard as we'd worked on the ordinance for the city's piece and the safety net, that we had some hiccups with people being able to access the resources that we had lined up. Nicole, you've had a meeting with Housing and Credit Counseling a week and a half ago, something like that. Could you give us an update on what the access pattern now will be for people who are concerned about retaliation with the code compliance complaint?
Our main focus is to get everyone over to HCCI, which is kind of what we had originally thought of. Originally, when we were doing that, obviously this is, people are in a position where it's quite sensitive time-wise. And so we hadn't really had a whole lot of training as far as how to take care of those people when they're having those types of crisis moments. But HCCI has now started to, and completed training for all of their people on the phones and on the front desks to register kind of a questionnaire as far as what's an emergency and what isn't. So a lot of our education and everyone are going over to HCCI. And from there, then we can see whether or not if they need to just either talk to people that are there, or whether or not if we kind of forward that on over to KLS, and then KLS then would walk through their process. But we are going to be doing a bit more educational push, just to make sure that people are aware of what their resources are, what that looks like, and what is available.
Thank you. I mean, the issue, just so it's clear that we all have the same information, was that both Housing and Credit Counseling, Inc., HCCI, Kansas Legal Services, and the City of Topeka had an online form you could fill out and send in so that the counselor would have some of your information in advance. And with that, almost a default was a 2 to 5 day turnaround time to get a response. And so for people that were not computer literate or comfortable, or who it's Friday and we need to know today what to do over the weekend, that wasn't good enough. And so thank you for getting that meeting together and getting that taken care of. So the HCCI people will do a little bit of interview if somebody's calling about retaliation counseling, and further,
Yeah.
they'll refer, either they can get an HCCI counselor that day if the time frame is pressing, or even can get a KLS person that day if they need legal.
Yeah, because they can refer over to KLS then as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll be much more time sensitive, because that seemed to be the issue, is
Right.
people that were having a time sensitive issue are having to wait the same as people that weren't necessarily having a time sensitive issue. So that was taken into more of an account, I think, moving forward, so that way then it was appropriately handled.
And just, if I didn't say the words at KLS, is Kansas Legal Services.
Kansas Legal
So-
Services, yes.
Yes.
I do have a couple of questions. One, are we in the process of anticipating when KLS's contract is going to expire and getting that done for another year? Have you heard from city
I
attorney?
haven't heard from city, but I can follow up to see what that looks like then, as far as how long the contract is going to continue to go.
Yes, I'm requesting that because I know this was somewhat of a pilot project, and we had done the set aside of about $80,000, I think it was. Was it in the 2025 budget?
Yes.
It
Saw
was.
it.
That
Yes.
was my question.
It was,
Fine.
okay, so, but just if we could verify that. The other thing is as far as we know, HCCI still are they still short-staffed? I mean, were they down one, or was that my imagination?
I think they have a space for another employee, but right now is a little bit of like their off time. So right now, we're trying to make sure that we push for education. That way we can really start to track to see how many people are really necessary over there, rather than employing another person and not having them have enough work to be able to do.
That's good. I mean, when we met before as the lead team, there was some discussion, Monique Glaudet was here, about working out some way to get them an additional person. So maybe elaborate just a little more. That actually did get processed when you met with HCCI, right?
Yes, we did
Okay.
look to see, and I'm sure, I don't know if Monique wanted to chime in anything as far as when we spoke, she was there, that we looked to see whether or not if it would be cost effective to have somebody almost be like a case manager for that type of position, to kind of help walk people through this. But we realized, I think a lot of what was going on was people were having an emergency and they were going back and forth. So we needed to make sure that there was actually enough people that were needing that help to be able to justify the hours. So what we're doing now is, instead of employing somebody that potentially couldn't be utilized or may not be utilized to their fullest, we're pushing out much more of the education material to justify whether or not if we do need an additional person, or whether or not if Abby at HCCI can handle the workload.
Okay. And have we received, and maybe I just missed, any numbers on HCCI and calls you've been receiving, and so we can start having a tally?
We are starting to put that all together, and I have gotten some stuff from HCCI. It just was a lot lower than what I think we had expected, so that's why we weren't going to justify a case manager, because there was only several people that they had helped specifically for retaliatory action, when we already know there's way more than just 2 or 3, because we have been talking to them. So that's where we, I think, needed to kind of push more so that education to see how they're actually getting over to those resources, rather than setting that up and not having as many people over there.
So would it be then appropriate to say we're looking at some kind of bottleneck? Is that even, the bottleneck is all the people that need help that are stuck somewhere that aren't getting to where they need?
I think a lot of
go?
it is just whether or not if they're going to be comfortable enough to use the resources. So educating people enough to say, hey, like, these are options, putting it at a level to where it's easily understandable. We're looking at reviewing some of the materials that HCCI had put out as far as videos and just easily accessible images, so that way then people know this is what HCCI does, this is what KLS does, this is like just very simplistic as far as easy materials that they can take a look at, because I think maybe some of that was lacking originally when we did a lot of the education, that it was maybe a little bit too comprehensive. And these are people that are obviously having an emergency. We're not going to read an entire packet of information. We're needing to get them over there quicker.
So I think one thing that we need to make public in this public meeting that we've talked about behind the scenes is it has taken decades and decades for us to get in the situation that we're in, not only with code-related issues, but that slow movement of, even though there's a wealth of really good landlords here, the despicable ones that use the power as they have it to threaten and have retaliatory type measures. So it's taken decades for it to get to the point that it is now. So I think that what we're looking at, honestly, is the hit and misses that come as we try to keep this kind of Pandora's box open, because we know it needs to be open, and then how do we service? So for people that are watching this, I think that, if you know folks that are going through retaliatory measures, understand that we're really trying in a really comprehensive way to get on top of this, to be able to have the materials that are needed. And I think that we know we're just looking at the tip of the iceberg. We
Yeah.
understand that.
A lot of it, I think, is creating a sense of trust that we are doing what we're saying we're doing. Whereas it's been lacking for a really long time, that accountability portion. And so we're having to account for that a little bit. Even though we have the resources, we're having to build up that trust as well, that people can trust us, that we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do.
And honestly, I think that has to be built up a little bit with HCCI too. Not just the city, with HCCI too. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you have something?
Yes. I would simply like to ask for the information of notification that Deputy Mayor asked for. I was wondering if the entire committee would get that information.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can do that.
We actually had been working on it for the performance measures and the data, and Nicole will get to that in a little bit, but having been live at the meeting where we had some paperwork when you got some first numbers, something that has struck me about this whole thing is, yes, we knew that we needed to have these services available, but also somebody who could help people get to the right place at the right time. And so thank you for the work and the progress we've made on that. But the other thing that struck me is, even though we focused on, and I'm eager to get some feedback from others, the full committee really, is that we focused on retaliation because we knew we wanted to protect people. We wanted to make sure they were protected, and then we had resources. But what we have is a lot of people who who are afraid to complain because they don't want to move. Some people have been told, oh, if you call code, they're going to condemn your place, and then you won't have a place to live, so people don't call. It's more complex than just retaliation, and I'm wondering if we really don't want to respin, I'm not sure how to do it, but respin that approach to, don't be afraid to call code compliance, or something like that, so that with the counseling, with the threshold to be a check mark on the box as eligible for counseling, and, like with the KLS contract being paid for it, you had a preliminary printout of KLS's counseling in the landlord-tenant arena, and there were, one of the questions, and I don't know if you'll answer it today because I don't know if you've got the answer, but there might have been 50 items, but only about 6 of them said in the description that they were about retaliation. There were a whole lot of just eviction cases, which is not what we contracted with them to do. So I'm assuming they weren't paid for by us, but we were getting a whole printout of everything they'd done that was rental related. But, looking at that and looking at the trouble of getting people in, looking at the low numbers at HCCI when we know people call about code compliance there all the time, it's like, what is it turning out, of course, is that almost everyone is not eligible for the city's retaliation protection because there's some hiccup in whether they've paid the rent. They're not eligible if they didn't pay the rent, but they need protection no matter what happened if they're in substandard conditions. So once again, I think we need to rethink just how we get people's attention that the services are available, and maybe what we call it even in our little internal sector. Spencer,
Councilwoman, I would like to add that I just want to reaffirm that my staff is passing out all the documentation with every rental inspection. So the occupants are now being educated on how it's supposed to happen, what is not allowed by law. So there is a wealth of information that is being passed out now for all the occupants, and I'm very confident that they're being educated. Whether they take us up on it or not is up to them, but we do have to change that behavior, and we have to reach the landlords and make sure they know that we are doing that.
Yes, and thank you for the update and adding your people in, because your people are making those face-to-face contacts every day.
Right.
And that's wonderful. And as Nicole says, the trust building is still important. But if we still have people, maybe it takes time to percolate through a neighborhood or a family or whatever, so that the people who really need to have you come out actually will call. If they haven't called, they don't meet your guys, they don't get the brochure, they don't.
And we do take extra steps. My staff does come to our supervisors and say, hey, this is an eligible property that probably should be condemned, and we pull them back from that. I say, we don't want to condemn it unless we find alternate housing for the occupants. So let's work on that. So they do spend probably 20% of their time working with housing to get them on a list. And this goes even deeper with the homeless encampments. So we're working extremely hard on locating alternative housing for everybody that we run into before we condemn the property, unless it's an emergency.
You're not condemning very many, are you?
I would probably say if a house is eligible to be condemned, if it meets the criteria, I'd probably say 80% of them go through the condemnation if it's unoccupied, number one. And number two, if it is occupied, we always spend the extra effort locating alternative housing. So I can tell you that their list has grown by a huge number because of our efforts of putting people on that list that would not have been there because they didn't know the process. So we're giving them an out before we condemn the property, unless it's an emergency. If it's an emergency and it needs to be condemned, we're going to condemn it. But if it's simply for lack of utilities, or if it's for deficient wiring or plumbing, we're going to get them help. We're going to get them services before we actually Now, we do go ahead with the housing cases. We let the property owner know that this must be fixed.
Right.
Now.
Right.
If not, you're going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
So we're doing everything we can to make sure that our residents are put in a nice, safe, secure property.
Yeah, one of the reasons people don't call is that they don't want to move, and they have lived in those circumstances
Right.
for a while already for whatever reason, and so to have the fear that you all that they'll have to move it. You know, people are different about it, but it's expensive, it's hard. You change your address, you change schools, you can't get to the babysitter, you can't get to work. It's huge for people.
And a lot of folks don't qualify for other types of housing.
Right.
So they're
That's
in this
right.
position for a reason.
Right.
And so we have to find another location that will meet their needs and they qualify for. So it's not as easy as one would think.
Well, that's encouraging, and I think it's important for people to, in an appropriate way for us to communicate that,
Absolutely.
we're giving the owner X amount of time to fix things, and unless it's not fixable. Okay. Other conversations about how to present it or questions? Okay. The last item on the updates is the 2024 IPMC. We've got a strategy worked out. I'll hand that over to John unless you want me to, I'll introduce it. The issue is we've got the 2024 now has been introduced as the International Model Code. We built ours off the 2012. And John has actually been eager all year to get going on the updates.
For a couple of years. So Alan had approached me and had some great ideas that we're going to collaborate together because he has some adoptions too that he's working on.
Okay.
And so to level the playing field for PMU, we're going to collaborate with Alan. We're working with legal, and I invited a civilian review board. And the board is populated by 3 citizens that I have great value in their opinions, and they're reviewing the code also to make sure it meets our citizens' needs. So that is in the progress. There's a couple of boards that we have to present to. We have a couple of dates in the near future, right after the beginning of the year, that we're going to meet in person, and we're going to discuss the adoption process. And we're going to review the codes that they may have issues with. When I say issues, maybe it's a code that they're not accustomed to seeing, that we're going to start enforcing or be more aggressive with. And any adoption that we have to make to meet our needs for the values of the governing body, we're going to do that. And before it's all said and done, you're going to have something in place that you're going to have confidence in your PMU staff enforcing.
And thank you for that. You've got this team, and some of us got copied in on who you invited. Have they accepted your invitation?
Absolutely.
What would you share who those 3 people are?
Sure. Steve Vogel is the president of the Shawnee County Landlord Association. Susan McClarity is she not chair of the COC?
I think she's vice chair this year. Is she
She's the chair of
then?
COC. And Mr. Cox, what's his first name? Kevin Cox, president of the Oakland NIA. So I have had many discussions on other topics with these 3 people, and they have given me confidence in their ability to read through the adoption and give great input, and I value their input. So they're going to review what we like about the 2024 adoption and what we don't like. And so I'm going to lean on them for their input on the civilian side. And then I'm going to lean on the Public Health Safety Committee for your input on the city side. And then I'm going to lean on Alan for the process.
So,
Okay. Alan, you want to add something there?
sure. As John so eloquently said, we are looking at the 2024, and we came to the process of looking at that because we all use ICC codes, International Code Council codes. And for a little background, right now we are in process review of, or review on the fire department side and the building side of implementing the 2024 International Fire Code and the 2024 International Building Code. Since those codes are complementary, that was a big part of when we came to John and said, hey, let's see if we can get you on the same code. So all of our code sets will reference each other, which they do, and in a complementary manner. And that puts us on one of the most current codes that's out there. And I can tell you that from what we looked at, and we had a big training on it last week, we spent 8 hours with International Code Council and the Building Code. A lot of what it addresses now aren't major changes, but they're clarifying changes to help us out in difficult situations, as well as it addresses emerging technologies. Lithium-ion batteries. That's a big part of what they've added to the codes, because we get into situations now where we've got large amounts of lithium-ion batteries being stored in facilities, and we're seeing fires with that. So we were really hoping that the city could get on that. We could come out with that even playing field of that 2024 code, and that will help our codes work better together. So that was really where we went with that, and I'm excited for this change forward, and I think it's going to bring John a lot of clarifying and helpful updates in that code since 2012.
And with the adoption is going to come hours of training for the inspectors to bring them up to date with the new code.
One of the things that you've gotten, most of us have, I assume all of us have seen the current, what John and I are determined will, from 6 months from now forward, be called the Topeka Property Maintenance Code. So it's clear that it's our version, not the international code, and that we'll have it really available. We already have that one from front to back, and it's printed, just whether it's the original IPMC language or whether it's our customized language, it just reads straight through so you can see what it says today. You're making arrangements through legal or or someone to have the 2024 set up in exactly that same fashion,
Correct?
Yes.
so that we've got one versus the other, and you can line them up and just compare, read them individually or compare across, right?
Correct.
That's great. What I'd like to do is challenge the committee members themselves as to whether you would like to be included in that distribution for the early review and comments, so they can go back to John and his team for comment. What John and I talked about was if any or all of us were willing, to look at it over the holidays, basically, I would call it, between whenever you can get them set out, which is within the next week is what you're hoping, right?
Correct.
And like by around the first week of January or before, get any comments back. We're the ones who live with that, who, the people call, and then we're wanting to refer them to that code. We know where things have kind of rubbed up too, as you guys do. And so if again, any or all of the committee members are willing to take a look through that, it could be shared as well. If we've got NIA people or people that have been through something that want to have a look at it, right? We could kind of open up the umbrella and then collect up some comments.
We can.
Okay.
Absolutely. The review board already has access to it, so they're already offering notes.
Okay.
That's already in the progress for that.
Okay.
As for the rest of the committee, I can make sure it's accessible, and they can take a look at it too.
Okay. I wouldn't put you on the spot, but if everybody's interested in looking, okay. Well, we're in. So if you send those out, then do you want to set a specific deadline? I'm sure we can send you questions or comments anytime, but do you want to set a deadline, John?
Let's just make it after the holidays, January 1.
January 1?
Yeah. Is
Okay.
that fair enough?
Yeah. Or how about January 3, in case we don't get it done by New Year's Day, we got 2 days.
That's what I was thinking too. That is a holiday, John. Maybe like January 10th,
I don't-
15th.
6 is fine. I don't want to set a deadline and cement. I want your comments to keep flowing.
Thank you.
This is a work in progress. So if I give you a deadline, it seems counterproductive to me. I want you guys to be relaxed, read it, feel free, take your time, give me your comments, and we'll work on it from there.
Thank you so much. This is exciting. And I think overall, we didn't set specific parameters, but given as big as it is, one of the things that's in there is, even in the model code, are sections that are expected to be customized in each community based on what your fines and fees are and things like that. And so I know John will also be looking at those, the dollar amounts and so on, but for all of us as well, hopefully by January, hopefully we're all going to just stay on for another year and finish this job together. But to be able to in January kind of see where we are, but there will be discussions about some of those issues in community and neighborhood meetings, I'm sure, as well as with us. You're also going to ask your inspectors for feedback, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we're thinking realistically that it might take 6 months from the first of the year to get it all the way done. But you're shrugging,
No,
but
that's about right.
been there, done that.
No, I was sitting there,
You spend 2 or 3 months of just, getting the details all worked out, then it's got to come here, then it's got to go to council, and it takes time to get it done, so.
Honestly, I was thinking like 9 months, but
Oh, well, we might want to set an
Yeah.
internal calendar if we want to make it 6, and
that'd be awesome.
but, collaborating with you too, so if there are things about some tweaks in the fire code or the building code that, exits from second floors onto the ground safely or whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is we want to make sure that all of our codes align. In the past, there's been disagreements, and that's never a place we want to be.
Correct.
Yeah, well, and I go back far enough, I remember when they were all synced up and it was fine, so if we've gotten out of alignment, we want to fix that, for sure.
Yeah, our goal is to adopt the 2024 as is, but obviously we have to look at our current municipal codes, make sure there's no conflicts, and we have to make several amendments just to meet our needs. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
And
so
we
that's what we're
also-
going to be doing.
One of the things that happened with the first time adoption with the 2015 code and some of the bugs that we've discovered along the way was that the language said X or Y in the code itself, but there is a tutorial guide that you all get to use to train inspectors and things like that. And what happened was people latched on to the examples in the tutorial and said, well, this is it. And so they weren't enforcing it if it wasn't mentioned by name in the code. So we've got to get past that. We will only get the code though, right?
That's correct. Unless you want the other one also. If you want the commentary,
Yeah.
if you would like that, I see that only as an asset. I don't see it as something to keep you from making a decision.
We would get to see what you all see then
Sure.
and see how the training goes.
And we use those code with commentary throughout the cycle of the life of that code extensively, because that really is back getting to intent. So that really helps you all making decisions on looking at what the intent of that section of the code was.
Okay.
So that may help clarify a lot of things, because I know I scratch my head and I read code all the time. Sometimes I'm scratching my head going, I'm not really sure what they meant. That's when we go back to that commentary, and that helps us interpret that code better.
Absolutely.
And we probably don't need the old one, but if you send us the new one,
Sure.
it goes with the new code.
I'll make it
Okay.
available in a shared document. Folder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll end up getting links, right?
Yes.
Is there anybody who prints them? Is it hard to get it to print from what you have?
The PDF version is not hard to print. However, we're working on creating a system to where we can place our amendments into it to
Okay.
make it readable and formatable.
Okay.
Because if we make it hard to read, we make it hard to cipher in the field for my inspectors, that's counterproductive.
Right.
So we're going to get
Okay.
it right.
Well, we'll see what we get here. So we should look for links then from you.
Correct.
All right. Well, thanks so much. That's exciting. Okay, discussion and feedback. I will do a spoiler alert in that there's been some changes in staffing and some challenges in getting as much data for today as we had hoped. So we're going to start with Nicole, and she's got some handouts and will let us know where we are with performance measures and performance data. but we'll likely spend most of our time with Monique because the Marketing and Education Committee has met and is cooking on some ideas for education. Okay, Nicole, take it away, and thank you.
Well, we did, oh, sorry.
Got the whole team, all right.
I know, we're all lined up now. Whew. We did go through, and I know you and I had met even previously to go over how we were going to take a look at all of the data from before the Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance was started to now, and evaluating how successful that has been in all of its implementations. And so you have in front of you the first adopted version of what the Changing Our Culture was. So that was the guiding principles, the aspirational goals, your 4 challenges. This is what had gone through council and had been adopted back in 2021. And then the next 2 pages are the performance measures data. So the first with the grade section is what we were looking at to take a look at all of our measures to say, hey, how successful has this been in all of these different areas? And you'll see that each one of the sections has the challenges that it essentially goes back to. So it's tying into those 4 different challenges. How are we evaluating that as a whole? And the third page then that you have is the draft version of the data that we were starting to gather with Wendy, but she has retired now. And so it's been a little bit of a learning curve. I have sat in her office, this last week and tried to learn and absorb everything that I possibly could. So originally I thought that we were going to be done as far as reporting for this, but I instead had to start to learn how to manipulate these numbers and take a look to see how I could gather those. And so it'll take us just a little bit longer, but we will. This was just the draft version that you have as far as kind of from those performance measures, the grade section that correlates the number-wise. But this is, just draft, very kind of first initial run through. We'll have a lot more numbers to come. It'll just take a little bit.
So we've looked at this as a lead team and made some notes. For instance, on the on this the number of inspections and so on. We know that there's not much of a baseline because during COVID nobody was going out and we were short on inspectors and so on. So we're looking at watching these roll in. Maybe 6 months at a time. We had talked about 6-month cohorts. Deputy Mayor had suggested that for a lot of the data, and that maybe, especially for right now, bringing it in at 6-month cohorts, but then collapsing them together once a year has ended, so we begin to have more simple, trackable numbers. With the fact that this is still very much in progress, Nicole and I talked yesterday, we thought maybe we'd just give you all of these, this core doc again, and then the performance measures in terms of what data we would collect for those, and let you take time outside of the meeting to review that and see if it looks like staff has captured what you think we need for measures. And then, again, look at that starting data, filling in those charts and see what they've got. And again, if there's any feedback about something you want that's more specific or framed a little bit differently that you think is critical for us to track this movement, if we could get that feedback. Nicole's working on it. Talk about building the jet in the air.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah, we're excited for Wendy, but I was a little sad, I will say, because she has a lot of knowledge.
Well,
and
just in
going
advance
through,
on Nicole's situation, because Nicole and John also, when all this sort of came down, have been representing us in the Tyler transition training. So we're changing databases as well for the case file records and how the numbers and the classifications get coded. So
yeah.
There's a lot of wheels moving there. So.
A lot.
Yes.
Lots of
And so, just so we all know your, your struggle.
So Karen
Go
Black
ahead.
didn't have a little addendum for this,
Yeah.
break in case of,
Yeah.
break in case of the not complete.
Well, I don't know, maybe we should offer that that, if you ever need to call one of us just for
Yeah.
a little break in the stress.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
We'll
I really do
promise to
love.
perk you up.
Yeah, coffee. So, I mean, if anyone wants to, stop by the office and bring me a coffee, I will gladly accept.
I mean, it looked like a great start to me, and I was so eager to see it filled, and now I'm just glad we've got this far.
Right.
So, give you something to work from.
Something, Chair.
Okay.
I would just encourage, I know we're a four-person, there's nobody else, us four, right? A four-person committee. I know everybody's busy, and I understand that our two other members have loads and loads to do. I think that we all underestimate how much work Chairman Hiller puts into all of this along with staff. So if we could, especially going into into looking at this, your all's feedback is just so important as well. Again, I know that we're all really busy, and this whole changing our culture of property maintenance initiative was the biggest bite of any kind of initiative I think that the council probably has ever undertaken, and we understand that because it's drawn out for 5 years. And so that, including the work that staff does, this is such a big beast. And so any additional insight and help is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and give her credit for pushing those performance data pieces. And so, yes, if people could look through these really within the next week, so that Nicole, who's working on them actively right now, if there are tweaks, I think, because this is just about a report, these are not actionable items, I think we're fine as far as COMA to go ahead and just work on making sure our data sets are what we want to see safely. So feel free. And I see Marcus Miller has joined us as well. Welcome, Councilman. And you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate you.
And
Appreciate the discussion.
if you want to
Great
be
information
CC'd in on
by
all
the
these
staff.
distributions, you're welcome too.
Send it on over. I think Deputy Mayor mentioned sending it over to the governing body, or at least for one or two of those reports. So yeah, I think the more information we have, the better.
Well, we'll send you the data sets as well. And
Thank you.
all right, moving on, we now have our Marketing and Education Committee sitting almost in full in front of us. They did some brainstorming on Friday about, we decided, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, that really working hard on that public education and networking needed to be our focus, both for the existing things that we have as well as emerging issues like vegetation, moving into its second warning year before a full compliance. And so, Monique, are you the lead, or Dan, or Taylor? Who?
Monique's gonna take it away.
So, happy Wednesday. I'm excited it's Wednesday.
Let me clarify too. The thought here is that Monique is going to present these, and this will be a full discussion item for us
Absolutely. Yes.
today in the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So wanting to talk to you in regards to, first of all, community engagement has been thrilled. I don't want to speak on behalf of communications, of being involved from your initial discussion about changing our culture of property maintenance. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to handle the mowing component that we had for the first few years. And we're extremely excited to have a conversation with you this morning in regards to some potential enhancement initiatives that we could add to the program. These are brainstormed ideas that I came up with a couple of weeks ago, shared at our last marketing meeting. This morning, I'd like the opportunity to be able to share a couple of those initiatives with you. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do all. I wanted to make sure to preface that. And I'd like to be able to ask that after we have some deep discussion, that your committee chooses two at your next committee meeting, so then that would allow me the opportunity to develop the programs so we could get started with whichever two you choose in 2025. So if I could just share the thought of the reason why we created these. It's to foster more of a culture shift in our community around the property maintenance. It's essential for us to promote pride, accessibility, and collective responsibility, which we have been doing with the Changing Our Culture Property Maintenance Program. These initiatives, we believe, will really enhance and provide an opportunity for our neighbors to become more involved. And give them more opportunities versus just having just the mowing program. And so I wanted to share some of them with you. These are definitely in the embryonic stage. They can be tailored a little bit more if we need to, but I wanted to share the thoughts. So the first one was to have community cleanup days that has the new component of youth engagement programs. So to host a monthly or quarterly community cleanup event where neighbors work together to maintain common spaces or streets. Community engagement will provide small equipment and supplies such as gloves, trash bags, rakes, brooms to make participation easy upon request. We would involve local youth in property maintenance through service, learning, or volunteer programs. Teens could earn service hours or small rewards for participating in neighborhood projects, not on personal property. The focus would be on middle school, high school, and college students cleaning neighborhoods surrounding their respective schools. That's the first initiative. The second is Yard of the Month program, recognizing neighbors who exemplify good property maintenance with Yard of the Month, consisting of a yard sign and reward. Winners will receive a small prize like a gift card and public acknowledgement at City Council, on City 4, and through social media posts, fostering pride in keeping properties well maintained. And I'll do a little sidebar. I'm a little selfish about number 2 because I grew up as an Air Force brat on an Air Force base, and the Galati family received Yard of the Month every month for the 4 years that we lived on Bowling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., and that's because it was a stress reliever for my father. I don't remember ever working or assisting him. I remember being prideful with a sign, and I think I got ice cream sandwiches or something of that nature. But it was a wonderful way that there was a group on the base that was chosen as the committee. They drove around the various neighborhoods, and the Gladiators won every month. So just thinking that it was very prideful for us. I am a little over 21 and can remember that very succinctly now. So I just think it would be a very nice thing for us to be able to start a possibility to be able to do. Number 3, property maintenance workshops. I'm sorry, John, I had never had the opportunity to have a conversation with John. So John, I apologize I didn't have a chance to speak to you more in detail, but we will if they choose it. Offering free workshops on basic property upkeep, seasonal lawn care, basic landscaping, exterior home care, driveway and sidewalk repairs. The workshops will be held in the community and led by local experts or experienced community members and provide neighbors with the knowledge to improve their properties. And these workshops have been done some in the past, but most of them have been at very distinct locations. And one of our community partners, we had it at their location in the past. In the early 2000s, we had them here. But I'm speaking about taking the workshops into the community. Some of our neighbors can't get here on a Saturday due to the bus schedules or due to transportation issues. But if we partner maybe with the community centers or other community partners, we can take these workshops into the community. On number 4, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and Dan to speak to you about that, and then I'll come back to you about some other potential options.
So number 4, we would be continuing with our education campaign that we kind of kicked off this year, where we had the various posts and kind of informational videos and other things of that nature that we had pushed out to the public. We think this will be a good opportunity to continue and expand on that. We also had worked with John and his team to get some of that information out in different notices and in equipping the inspectors with different types of flyers and information that they can give out to individuals while they're in the community. We really want to continue hitting hard on that vegetation ordinance, since that is a little bit newer, making sure people understand what's allowed on their property and what they're supposed to be doing. And just overall, we also had worked with John and Wendy to get some of the most common violations that they cite people for, so we can provide information to the community on how to recognize maybe they don't know that's a violation, or different ways of how they can fix that. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the things Monique was speaking on as far as getting out in the community and making sure people really understand what's expected and how they can work on improving their property. So we already have a lot of those pieces in place, but just continuing to expand on what we have and adding in more to that to make it a little bit more robust this year.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to it? Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Dan. So the other partnerships on page 2 would be something that community engagement is going to do anyway for 2025, but it's a wonderful way to collaborate with change in culture of property maintenance. So I'm collaborating with local businesses. I'm partnering with local businesses to promote, to provide, discounts on maintenance supplies or services for community members. The businesses also could sponsor the cleanups if cleanups is one of the initiatives in which you choose. And the last being the community engagement mini beautification grants. Community engagement will develop a neighborhood mini grant program. Grants will be from amounts of $50 to $250 that will provide small-scale funding opportunities for projects that enhance the quality of life in neighborhoods, designed to empower residents to promote community involvement. The program supports initiatives that create lasting benefits for all neighborhood members. Examples of eligible projects would be community gardens, safety improvements, shared resources, educational initiatives, and environmental efforts. There will be requirements, an application process, and a review committee will be created as well, and we'll have informational sessions to share this information. All of these initiatives, whichever ones are chosen, and the educational campaign will be, all expenditures will be incurred by community engagement. That's all I have to share with you.
Okay, well, I bet all of our wheels are turning, so Councilwoman, start.
Well, one wheel's turning, the other one's not. But just want to say thank you for that, and to let our other committee members know is that we have monthly at least marketing meetings where sometimes we are almost to the point where we're hitting our heads against the wall trying to understand how it is that we reach out to community to have this stuff stick. So the mowing program has definitely been a challenge, and we've had tiny successes, small bursts of successes, and so we knew that we were going to have to pivot and do something different, and then Monique said, give me a moment to come up with some thoughts that I have, brewing. But for the full committee to know that really getting out there to where people understand, the changes that are coming and how to help themselves and how the city can help educate them, we're really, really, really trying hard to come up with new ideas for what will stick with our neighborhoods. So just understand that as after listening now with these ideas from Monique, which are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sure.
I'll throw in a few comments, but help get this moving. We've kicked this around so much, so this did get wheels turning for me. For instance, somebody had talked along the way to the newspaper about whether they would do a feature about this, and they'd indicated that we needed a person. We needed to be able to build it around a story of some sort. And so it seems to me that some of these could be kind of linked. I find myself drifting back to the Yard of the Month program, and whether that was just the best looking yard, or this month we're looking for somebody who took a yard from totally being overgrown with vegetation to being spit clean, and so that's the we put a challenge out. People can, however they want to, take on that challenge, nominate themselves, nominate somebody else. It gives us the story on social media. It gives us the follow-up stories of what happened. We use, and it could maybe be done with other pieces of this as well, but that real life story. I know when OmniCircle the first year was helping mow, the stories of their volunteers as well as the photos of the peoples in the yard, that's what grabbed me. And seemed the most shareable and the best way to bring it alive for other people. We needed that network to get it out. And so we talked a little bit at the last marketing meeting. I don't see it here yet, but has there been any work done on whatever you'd call it, a drop-down list of each time we're putting out the invitation for X and Y, this is how we're going to get it out, and correspondingly how we would announce winners, or
We're still in the process of developing that overall document, but there will be some kind of guidelines, such as the document that we had for last year that kind of hit the different markers of when we're going to go on, a news show, when we're sending out different things. So we're still developing all of that. We just had a kind of like a high-level discussion on Friday to kind of
Okay.
go through some of these ideas that Monique presented and just bring those to you guys and kind of see where you would want to go in what direction before we kind of develop that whole
'Cause that would-
calendar.
Yeah, it would kind of determine
Yeah.
what we were doing based on what it actually was chosen.
I guess
as to how.
when I think of it in simple terms, though, we talked about it and we did a little of this and a little of that, but we never hit a rhythm. So that people were looking for our announcements of what was coming and looking for our announcements of what happened. And if we can hit some sort of rhythm, and it might be a different one for, well, if we build it around these Yard of the Month, and then the themes, which talk shows and which, I think of the United Way hosted listserv for agencies that has like 140 people that get that once a week, for crying out loud, but to make sure that we've branded ourselves to the point where whenever we've got an announcement, everybody grabs it and sends it out to their network.
Yeah.
Or when we've got an award to mention.
The goal would be to have a calendar for 2025 that kind of hits January. These are the items, kind of have like a timeline of when those things are going to be going out. So definitely that will be in development once we get these ideas a little bit more fleshed out.
Yeah, I definitely think the first step is picking which initiatives, and then we'll build a campaign about what we have chosen.
Okay, yes?
Thank you. I think that makes sense. So moving on, because we don't want to get into the weeds too much with this, because I'm sure we don't want this meeting to go, it has an ending point. What I feel is the strongest here is when I look at the community cleanup days, youth engagement. I am telling you, I would be willing to go to schools to talk with the principals, to talk, with whoever, with you guys, to how we can get the middle schools, the grade schools involved. I'm down.
Perfect.
Just tell me when you need me. The other thing that I like is, and we know the educational campaign, it should be paramount, so I like that. I like the Yard of the Month. I think that may be a little bit challenging, but I think that if depending on how we roll it out, I think that there is strength behind it. And the community mini beautification grants. But I think that because they are such a small amount, we really have to help imagine that out before we start trying to sell that
Absolutely.
to community. And I know that there's been some suggestions here, community gardens, safety improvements, but we need to help folks imagine, to get that creativity of how these small amounts can actually help in their community.
And Deputy Mayor, I totally agree with you. Please understand that I took a day spread out trying to come up with what I could think of. So absolutely, this is definitely not set in stone. We're willing to expand it however it needs to be and to modify it.
So just in a nutshell, that's where I am. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thoughts? Councilman? Spencer? Guest Councilman Miller? Okay.
Nothing, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we could talk a bit, yes, we have an ending, but it's 11 o'clock, so we want to get this going. We're talking about it now because we realized that we needed to talk about it in the fall if we really wanted a year-long program, and if this is our last committee meeting of 2024. How important is it? Some of the involvement in some of these ideas is having to come up with prizes and deliver them and have sponsors and so on. Is it enough and just cleaner to just have the program, have the education, have the pictures of people getting, attending, giving credit to whoever the trainer is or whatever if we do that, photos of the Yard of the Month, and we can get those people that were involved on those talk shows or, mention them in those releases about it. I think that's probably enough, but I don't know.
I think we had success with some of the giveaways we did this year, and I really think when we talk about getting the initiative off the ground, we kind of have to incentivize people a little bit with those kind of rewards or prizes. So it hasn't been an issue with the gift cards and stuff that we gave out this year. We definitely had a little bit more involvement with the people kind of identifying that they were kind of involved in those activities. So I definitely think the incentives kind of help a little bit with us kind of getting that feedback of what's actually going on in the community.
I'm interested in this first one, Monique, where you were talking about the youth being involved.
Yes.
And in your, again, draft note, it says not on private property. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think one of the concerns there is the misconception that once we go on someone's private property to assist them, there's the expectation that people will come back. And I don't want to create that expectation when we are dependent upon volunteers. If there's a group of young people that want to go help Dan's property, and then Dan has it in his mind, they'll be back next month, and they're wanting to be fair and equitable and to move on to Councilmember Banks' property, I think that we need to allow that to happen. So if we just think about streets, alleys, right-of-ways, we can contain that, and we also can spread the program to meet a larger, vast demographic of the community versus us being locked in helping people on their private property.
I guess
I think that's a couple different things. We can still have a volunteer component that's totally separate from this that can help people on their private property. But I think this one, we're mainly thinking about the streets and right-of-ways and alleys.
I guess what I was thinking of is vegetation, especially, that mowing and vegetation, going back to our very first year and still our goals. The idea is to get somebody's property mowed, help them find somebody who's going to mow it for the rest of the time. You know, we've, to limit going onto private property when that's our most important goal, to have people helping themselves and helping each other, and certainly to have young people involved.
So, Madam Chair, I would not challenge you, but I'd like to say to you, let us have the conversation first with the principals, with the students, to find out their interests.
Sure.
And if they come back and say not a problem, because I don't want us to get caught up into, we have to purchase the gasoline, we have to purchase the supplies, provide. So if we could just have that conversation with them to give them the idea and get their thoughts, I would suggest that we do that.
I'm combining these in my head and brainstorming with you, so I'm not trying to lock in, because I'm not sure we want to get ourselves in the position of running a program.
Yes,
And I know that's part of why you said, you know, we probably can't do all of these, but more that kind of freewheeling that we'd hoped we'd do the first year, where people simply volunteered to help somebody clear a house on their block. I want to be able to recognize those folks.
Absolutely.
You know, that initiative, and again, our goal was to change the culture that people were helping themselves and each other. And so whatever we choose for this method, you know, be something that feeds straight into that primary goal that we have with this initiative.
Sure.
And so, you know, the vision that we talked about a youth group that would go clean up a vacant lot. That's private property, but you know, we learned a little bit along the way where people who had done that with youth groups said, well, you know, we kind of go ahead with the right gloves on to get the needles out of there before they go back and pick up everything else. Okay, note to self, that's how to do that, right? But to the vision of, and again, we were going to start early this year so that there was time for clubs and organizations to be invited, if that's an approach that we wanted to take, that they could think about it and say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do once, or we're going to do it all season, or something like that. I would want to be able to recognize wherever, this is just conversational, not deciding, you know, wherever people went, if they did a good thing and helped somebody else and helped move it along. You know, again, thinking back over now these 3 years of experience we have, if we had one on mowing, now that we've learned a lot, we could celebrate somebody who's helping somebody mow or trim their yard. Gives us a chance to talk about the fact in our social media releases that we actually have a list. If somebody needs some help or needs an idea of how to hire somebody or what the going rate is, that we've got stuff on our website and they can call a certain number, and we've got people who have even listed themselves as available to do contract mowing. You know, all that can build around a focus without needing a program or taking a whole lot of, hopefully, your staff's time. That's just an example. I mean, same thing could be getting junk off yards or porches or whatever.
Yeah, and I think as we've been continuing with the initiative, we have been promoting those lists and those different resources for people. So I definitely think we'll continue with that with the education campaign. Hopefully with some of these other ideas, we could get a little bit more of community buy-in because as
what I
we've
was
discussed, it's kind of
hearing
been a
from
little
it.
limited on the people that come forward and kind of let us know that those things are going on in their community. So hopefully we could get a little bit more of the community buy-in on some of those aspects, but that information is definitely still going to be continue to be pushed out.
Yeah, I think the recognition program of some sort helps get the human interest in there to get the, so.
And I
that's
think
where
that goes into, like, part of the campaigns is once we have these going, and if we have it the day of, we're going to be taking pictures, we're going to be interviewing these people and letting the media know. So that will definitely be a facet of this.
Even though Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and I look really good standing behind a lawnmower for,
Yes, you did.
we can do better, right?
Right.
And like what I think we had talked about too with the first one, that it actually gives an image of, I mean, everybody knows each one of our schools in our city. And so that could be something that we're celebrating each one of those schools and creating that kind of rally around the school that's in those neighborhoods and kind of celebrating them for who they are, because they're all very, very different. And so just being able to celebrate each one of our sections within our schools, and I mean, that's going to involve all of our children then, all of our youth, all of our, teenagers.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I think that hopefully this will help us get some more of those champions that we can recognize, because I know we did the video with Wade Alvers that was the volunteer mower. So hopefully it'll help us identify some more of those people that we can kind of, do a video or do news interviews and recognize those people. So I think by having kind of like a general structure that people can kind of follow, that will allow us to kind of identify more of those people.
I can't help but saying across the table that even though you won't be working for the city, we would be happy to have you on our volunteer team for the next year and really ace this thing.
That's exactly right.
I have another question on the mini grant.
Madam Chair, if I can, please, pardon me for interrupting you.
Yes, please.
Let me say this, please, publicly. Destiny Hodges is a volunteer. I call her an angel. She just appeared one day. I got a call from security that someone was upstairs wanting to talk to me about the mowing program, and I ran upstairs, and I saw this angel that had wings that were invisible that only I could see, because she said, I'm here to volunteer to cut grass. I'm like, oh my gracious. Every time I called Destiny, John's team was phenomenal. His inspectors would call me immediately to say they'd had a situation. They vetted the person beforehand. There were dire needs. There were 5 of them that she and her family did. 1, the grass was as tall as probably half of my height. And every time I called her, she took care of it either that day or the next day. She's very humble and quiet, but I think at some point if we're able to recognize her either at a council meeting or something, it would be wonderful. Wade was phenomenal. I don't think Destiny would want to do a video, but just knowing that, I don't even know how she found out about the program. When I asked her, she never even answered me, but she was fantastic. And so I don't know that she'll be able to help us next year, but to Destiny Hodges, we thank you very much for being such a superb neighbor.
Well, we named the award after her.
There you go.
She doesn't have to show up at all. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, we want to leave room for that in the flexibility of this. And so I had another question then. In your mini grants thing, you were just throwing out the number of 50 to 250.
Yes.
Small scale funding opportunities. I realize this could take some time to super fine tune, but that's enough to buy a lawnmower. That's enough to buy some loppers. That's enough to buy some gloves. We handed them out that first year at the fair. What I'm thinking of is, every once in a while people talk about the old tool bank that the city had, and some people, volunteers, really ran that thing, and yet it was in one place and people couldn't get to it, and not as many people used it.
Sure.
We do have the tool bus from Habitat.
Yes.
But would that be, with those grants, in your vision, be to like a block group or a neighborhood association?
Definitely
or just an individual, or?
Only for neighborhoods. It has to enhance the entire neighborhood. So if we bought those tools, the neighborhood would have to agree upon that they would share them amongst each other. And so just keeping that in mind.
Just checking. I mean, because
Sure.
another past program that the city has had that everybody loved was the enhancement program, where neighbors could do work for each other and earn points and get materials and so on. We still would most of us would like to have that back. It was pretty cool. Just checking to see how you thought that would work, because, maybe it wouldn't be a program of its own, but I could see how that could be the award or, a piece of the encouragement of getting.
Sure, and so there will be some performance measures attached to these grants as well. So we won't just be providing the funds, we will be purchasing whatever it is that neighborhood needs, but we would be asking for a report back of how they utilized whatever items or whatever, how they would be using this initiative. Because that's important as well. We don't want to just provide things for people and say, well, hey, good luck and have a good time. We want them to actually give us the feedback as well.
Yeah, and maybe, this is detailed, but, keep it forever, or, if you're not using it anymore, give it back.
Absolutely.
Something like that. We have somewhat of an audience. Is anybody out there, you all are paying attention and soaking it up? Any ideas or constructive questions that you can throw in? You're welcome. Okay. Councilman Duncan, Miller?
Hold on, Marcus. Hold on. Sorry. All right. Yes. Just exactly what she was just talking about, real quick. The thought of letting people just unfettered, just keep it as long as you need it. I'm sure there will be some type of procedure to make sure people, like you were talking about, have to report back and held accountable. But time in, time out, that stuff has to be monitored, because if we're taking care of the whole neighborhood, we don't want somebody hoarding this. So I just want to make sure that's there.
Thank you. What we have found is that when people do come together somewhat as a neighborhood, often there is somebody who has tools who will loan them themselves. They don't need it, but if there's some things we can do to prompt that thought.
Yeah, I imagine with those funds,
Thanks, and Monique's the keeper of the LMI credentials or whatever we've got to have, depending on whose money we're using, right?
Oh, pardon me for 1 second, Taylor. So wanting to keep in mind, if we go back to initiative number 1, that's one of those that I said I would be more than willing to purchase supplies and tools so the neighborhoods wouldn't have to. So just kind of trying to remember, I'm not opposed to for the last one, for the mini grant, but I'd rather purchase them myself and have them and have people come and utilize them.
And
But-
just kind of be the tool bank then?
Absolutely.
Again?
Yeah. Just got to get away from that term, but yeah. Really mini tool bank.
Just to throw an idea out there, for the mini grants program, maybe we develop sort of a menu per se of, this is a $50 thing, these are the supplies you would need, and kind of, so then neighborhoods could kind of pick and choose, and it's not all on them to kind of come up with the idea. Just a thought of kind of developing that a little bit more, so it's not just a free-for-all on what we're doing.
Well, and I guess the backside of that kindly is the excuse that we don't have any tools goes away
Absolutely.
for whoever. Well, other thoughts on this?
So for us moving forward, it
Yes.
sounds like there's interest in the community cleanup days, yard of the month. The educational campaign will kind of happen, and then maybe this mini grant program. So those are the top 3 I'm kind of hearing.
Well, we didn't talk about the property maintenance workshops, I guess. I've been involved in those before. I thought that the way you presented it was really smart. Once again, if we want to if we're looking at a year's worth of topics, I know that I think OmniCircle is, for instance, is still interested in helping do this, so it's not like it would have to, if we had a major partner and we said we want to do 4 of them, we want to do one on how to redo sidewalks, we want to do one on whatever, it could probably be scattered through, they could be part of the focus.
Yeah, I know years ago, we did a kind of similar thing where we went and partnered with Habitat and did like a monthly video where we kind of showed how to do different things. So I definitely think there are those partners in the community that we can, connect with in doing the workshops if that's the route that we decide to go.
I mean, you all, this is a really great start, but to think through that whole season. And again, if we start in January and February with appropriate topics to encourage people to think about a volunteer campaign or something in this, whatever it is, and we stretch them out, maybe once you start to calendar, maybe it'll kind of talk back.
in terms
Yeah,
of-
and just knowing our workload for communications and what we're able to do, I want to make sure we don't overpromise and underdeliver. So I think that will help us if we hone in on a few projects, and then if you want to reach out to other organizations that want to pick up on these, but going with our departments, what we can help with, it would be helpful to know a couple of these that we can make a full fleshed out media year-long campaign and not just keep adding to it.
Gotcha.
I agree. And we've already talked about the challenges that we're going to be facing after the first of the year. A lot of pivoting, most likely, a lot of changes coming. So we want to make sure that you guys can commit to what you can commit. So with that said, I think there should be no more than 2, 3 at the most. Put them on a scale of importance and then go from there.
Well, if there's not other input from this body, and John and Alan, I mean, you're welcome to kick in on it too. What we
Madam
need is a
Chair?
plan, I guess? Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Deputy Mayor just said some pivoting and changing, and what's she talking about? I wasn't sure on that.
This just goes back to one of the marketing meetings we had.
I think it's just
Busy.
at the start of the new year, just reassessing what programs are working or maybe just new initiatives. So that's kind of what we mean. For starting the new year, we'll hit fresh with some new ideas, and these are the ideas. So if we can hone in on some of these.
Yeah. I guess when I look at that,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay, sorry. I thought you meant that we would have the plan and then we would have changes. So I apologize. I misheard. Thank you very much.
You know, if it turns out that a workshop or a business connection makes a fit with the priorities that are done, and they all kind of talk to each other a little bit. Well, what's a reasonable time for us to go ahead and get this whole calendar and system, as well as the drop-down lists of how we're going to do the media, nailed?
Well, as you know, this is my last week, but I
So
am planning.
Awesome.
But I am planning to leave them with at least a starting point of something that they can build upon, since we already had some of that already put together from last year. So hopefully we'll have something. I'm going to leave it in their hands after this week, but there should be something for you guys by the end of the year to review.
Okay, well, I was kind of kidding, but that's awesome. So if you're going to have a draft back to the team by close of business Friday, then
So, Madam Chair, we can't create the plan until I know for sure what the 2 priorities are. Unfortunately, due to logistics and creating a program, we can definitely ensure that 2 of the programs can be done. I apologize, I listed number 4, the educational campaign. No matter what, that's going to happen. So just strike that as being 1. So I really need you to choose 1 through 3. If you're wanting to do that today, that's perfect. But the sooner that I know which initiatives you want, then we can create those programs, then bring that back to you, the plan back to you, see if any adjustments need to be made. So the goal would be for us to be able to start January, February, the latest. But I need to know which 2 initiatives you're wanting to choose.
well, I'll just step out. It sounds to me like from this group, if we're talking about which 2 of the first 3, that the youth engagement and yard of the month were the top. Because we don't want to wait to give you guidance, that's for sure.
Perfect. Then we will have something to you, a program to you, no later than the 3rd week of December. Or when is your December meeting? I'm sorry, I didn't see a date.
Is it 12?
It's January.
Or no?
It's not until January,
we
is that
haven't.
correct?
Well,
I'm sorry.
my colleague, Deputy Mayor, doesn't want to have a meeting in December.
Oh, okay, sure, no problem, no problem. We'll be sure we'll provide something to you before the end of the year so you can vote upon it in your January meeting. How's that sound?
Well, let's go ahead and chat about that for a couple minutes, because really, if we want you all to be able to get started in January, is there willingness to meet briefly just to finish this sometime in December? Well, you all would normally have your marketing meeting on the 2nd week of December. anyway, the second Thursday at,
Because we're gonna have ours in December, so we could flush out a lot of that stuff.
so we could,
Yeah, that's what's like, I think there's a marketing meeting on the calendar already in December,
Yeah.
so that could,
let's shoot for that. That's a work team.
And given the scope of these projects, a lot wouldn't be happening in January and February since it will be winter. So that would give us the time to hit the ground running once the weather is changing. Of course, letting people know of these programs during the winter, but it's not like we're going to be having a sign up during winter months.
Well, I think if we can, we've got the work team because two of us can be on it and just meet and just work. But if we shoot for that and you've got your goal for Friday, then what was the date you said in the first place?
Which Friday?
oh, well, I was gonna say, we had the document that kind of had like a bunch of different topics hashed out that had copy that could go with those. So I'm gonna clean up that document a little bit and provide them with that, and so then they can kind of move things around as needed. As you said, in January, that there definitely could be some of that general education happening, and then really hitting the ground running come spring with the signups and all of that for these other initiatives that we're going to be working on. So I will leave them with that document, and then they can kind of build the rest of the calendar around all of those other things.
I just want us, sometimes things have sloughed and slipped, and so if we could get it done
So
before the
realistically,
first of
with
the
all
year.
of the, just holiday season, everything that's happening, everything that happens at the end of the year or doesn't happen at the end of the year.
Well, that's kind of why
Allowing
we
us
need
to
to just
maybe-
get this knocked out.
Yeah, well, allowing us to really fine tune all of that, and then probably I would imagine come January, actually put it to like a vote.
Looks
So
like
that way
December
then-
12th is the marketing team meeting in December. So if the goal is to have it drafted by then, work on it then.
We wouldn't have any action taken until at least January.
Correct.
Yeah, but if it's in full draft by the 12th of December, then we can push it out, get comments.
Yeah, I think by December we could have these two items fleshed out more so we
Yeah.
could have a better understanding. And then for January, that is when we could present the full year program initiative.
Okay. Just don't want us to lose it, that's all. It just seems to slide.
And then I would hope for the winter months after that draft, that, whatever schools we're going to try to engage with, that we would have those ready to go down the pike, and any help that you're going to be needing from us to possibly meet, so that by spring, whatever schools that are engaged are going to be ready to hit the ground running.
But also that alert out to the neighborhoods. They should already be they may have had their first meeting by the time we have our public health and safety meeting. January and February is when the neighborhoods are supposed to be looking at what their plans are for the year. So if we aren't ready ahead of that, and clubs and so on that are doing the same thing. So we want to make sure we're ahead of it.
So, Madam Chair, this evening we're having a CAC planning retreat, and this is one of the discussion items that I'll have. And so then going forward, every month for every CAC meeting in the year 2025, we'll speak to these initiatives.
Super. I think we've got a plan. Today is the third Wednesday in November. Does January 15th, which is the third Wednesday in January, work for this group for next meeting? This 9:30 to 11 work still? I mean, Kel will have to, or Tara will have to find a meeting room, but we'll get it worked out. All right. We'll shoot for January 15th then. Any other business to discuss? Thank you again, Taylor. I really appreciate it here. This meeting is adjourned.